Okay, so yesterday, you able to hear us now? I'm maybe muted.
Nope.
You
I
able to
hear you
hear?
perfect. I hear you, yes.
Very good. Okay, good morning, everybody. Yesterday, we were talking about, we got into the cooked vegetables yesterday.
Rabbi, you're not recording.
I'm not recording. It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. It's fine. It's on
It's not-
YouTube.
Oh,
The meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. Okay. Good morning, everybody. We're on. Let's take a look at Lamed Ches Amud Beis. We are on 38B. Lamed Ches Amud Beis. We're let's say a little bit towards the middle of the page. Okay. So yesterday we said there was two opinions regarding cooked vegetables. One opinion says that cooked vegetables is adama, and one opinion says cooked vegetables is shehakol. That's what we had yesterday in the Gemara. And then the Gemara says, so yesterday we had one opinion that says that it all depends. Was it a type of vegetable that you ate raw? If you eat it raw, and then as a result of the cooking, if you cooked it, it went down in level, then it would be a shehakol. But if let's say you had a vegetable that you don't eat raw, and then when you cooked it, it elevated it, then you would say a bar dam on the cooked vegetable. It all depends on the case of what was the status of the vegetable at the time when it was raw. Was it normal to be eaten in that status? And also, what's the status? What is it when after it is cooked? Did the cooking improve it? Did the cooking make it worse? And Tosfos points out, but what about if the cooking didn't do anything real, make any real difference in it? Then it remains the same. The bracha made the same. And Tosfos also compares it to wine. Let's say there's wine. There's something called yayin mevushal. There's cooked wine and there's not cooked wine, right? There's a certain level of heat that it reaches or not. So Tosfos says pretty much the taste of the wine, the quality of the wine is a very small. We all know the difference in quality is very minute between cooked wine and non-cooked wine. There is a difference, but it's not such a real strong difference that it should change the bracha. And therefore, Tosfos says the bracha on wine or any type of food that would go ahead and be, that as a result of the cooking, it's pretty much the same as before. Let's say an apple, a raw apple and a cooked apple, they pretty much taste, they're both in a very positive state. And therefore, both cases, you would say a bar priya eats on the cooked, on whether it's a raw apple or cooked apple. So we have the phenomenon, we have some foods in the raw state is bracha number one, in the cooked state is bracha number different bracha, and sometimes you have foods that are in the same bracha, both in the raw state and both in the cooked state. Okay, that's what we're up to. Now, maybe it'll be easy for the flow of the Gemara. We'll go to the piece about 10 lines from the top. We'll go back to that. Darash of Chizda Mishum Rabbeinu. The first word of the line is Rabbeinu. We'll run through that point because it's going to be a dissenting opinion, another opinion in the Gemara. You have the word Rabbeinu, Mr. Haber. You have the word Rabbeinu, Morris, Akiva, okay, Rabbeinu. Well, first of all, I don't know if I said hello to Avram and Shmuel and Yosef Atzadik. A proper good morning to everybody. Okay. Dorish of Chizda Mishum Rabbeinu. Rav Chizda said in the name of Rabbeinu. Who is Rabbeinu? Umanu Rav. Rav, the name of Rav. Shalkut Mevorchen Aleh Bar Adama. Cooked vegetables, you say a Bar Adama. Rabbeinu Yodem Eretz Yisrael. And our rabbis that came down from the Holy Land, they came down from the Holy Land of Eretz. They said something else. They said Umanu Ula. Ula came down from the Holy Land. He went from the Holy Land to outside the land, and he has a report Mishmei de Rabbi Yochanan. And he says, Amar Shalkus and Baruch Shakol Ne'er B'Baro. Then a Shalkut, the bracha is what? Shahakol. So we have two, and then the Gemara says, Vani Omer, Rav Chizda says, Rav Chizda's opinion is they're not arguing. They're talking about two different cases of foods, two different types of foods, and therefore the law is different because they're different foods, different situations of the foods. And therefore they're not contradictory. Vani Omer, and I say, if it opened up as a bar piyadama, it's normal to eat it in its raw state. Shoko, if you cooked it and it went down in level, shakol ni'er b'varo. The bracha is shakol ni'er b'varo. V'chol shetchilato shakol ni'er b'varo. Anything that the bracha opens up a shakol, because it's not normally eaten that way. It's not normally eat the let's say I said a potato, a raw potato. It's not normal to eat a raw potato that way. If you go ahead and you cook that potato, now it reached where it's supposed to be. Now it's a bar piyadama. So the Gemara says, I understand anything that in the beginning was shakol near bivaro, shoko bar piyadama. Let's say the carrot, the karba and the salka. The salka is the beet. The beet is
Good morning, Rabbi.
Morning, Aaron. So
How
the
are you?
beet, morning, good to see you. So the beet you would not eat in its raw state. So therefore therefore it becomes a bar piyadama as a result of the cooking. Ella. Anything that the bracha begins with bar piyadama, what's that food that goes down in taste? So that's what we said yesterday. Shokol shahakol, sheichim mishkachasla, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak mishkachasla betumi v'karsi. The Gemara says certain types of tumi v'karsi. How do they translate that? Certain berries. How do they translate the tumi v'karsi? Maybe the karsi is leek. Karsi on Rosh Hashanah, we have leek on Rosh Hashanah. Why do we have leek on Rosh Hashanah? Because the word for leek has to do with the word karsi is the karet. Cease to exist. So that's the karti, and that's the type of food that, as a result of the cooking, if you cook it by itself, it will go down in quality. So that's what the Gemara says. So the Gemara says that we have examples of foods that it's able to, in its raw state, it has one level, it's in a very positive level, and as a result of the cooking will actually make it go down in level. So that's they translate tumi and karsi is garlic and leek. That leek, as a result, by itself, if you these things were eaten raw, and the cooking will actually make it go down in quality. So now that was what we said yesterday, and that was a little review of what we said yesterday. Now the Gemara says, Dorish Rav Nachman Mishum Rabbeinu. We have a different opinion. Rav Nachman, in the name of our great rabbi, Umanu Shmuel. And what does he say? Shalkut mevorchin ale bar piyadama. He says that on shalkus, on cooked foods, cooked vegetables, you say a bar piyadama. V'charveinu haryodim Eretz Yisrael, and our friends that come down from the land of the Eretz Yisrael, Umanu Ula. And who is that? Ula Mishmeit Rabbi Yochanan. Ula, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. He says, Shalkus mevorachan aleh shahakol ni'er b'varo. He says that the bracha for cooked vegetables is shahakol. He does not have a cooked vegetable that you say a bar piyadama. According to this opinion states that vegetables that are cooked, there's one opinion that says that vegetables that are cooked, it's at the cooking changes it, and therefore the bracha will be a shahakol ni'er b'dvaro. V'ani omer, and Rav Nachman says, good morning Shmuel Rav, and Rav Nachman says, Ani omer b'machloket shniya. I understand that this is a machloket. This is a argument if whether the cooking of a vegetable takes the vegetable away from what it was, and it's no longer a bori priyadama, rather it's a shakol. So this opinion says it's all vegetables. This opinion does not make a difference between what type of vegetable it is. The previous opinion said it all depends on the type of vegetable. And however, this opinion says it's not dependent on the vegetable. A vegetable, once it's cooked, takes it away from its status as the original status of bori priyadama, and now moves it down to a different, it's a shakol. Now, No, but we hold not this way. We hold like we say we'll say a border priyadama. On most vegetables, when you cook them, it improves them, right? The Gemara itself was looking for what is that vegetable that as a result of your cooking it goes down in level. The Gemara was looking, and the Gemara came up with they found garlic, which we spoke about yesterday. Raw garlic, if you cook. And as Akiva said yesterday, that he eats raw. People eat raw garlic, but if you cook raw garlic by itself, not with other foods, garlic. When you cook garlic with other foods, with the other flavors of the other foods, the mix makes it positive. But if you cook raw garlic by itself, or leek, if you cook leek by itself, the leek vegetable that will go down, and that's what the Gemara says. So the Gemara is looking. So therefore, like what Ariel said. Most of the time, vegetables that are cooked, we're going to say hatama, unless the cooking. Say that again. If you garlic and leek, the garlic, if it's cooked by itself, meaning I'm going to make a pot of garlic, and I'm going to cook the garlic by itself. That's not going to happen. That's going to go. The taste will go down. What? Onions is when you cook it, it's very good when you cook the onion, right? Yeah. It's improvement when you cook onions. What? Yeah, so we're gonna see more about onions. Onions is we're gonna see more, but it's improved. We know it's not going down with the onions. Okay. So the Gemara says like this. The Tanya. Now he wants to prove he has a source. He thinks he has a source. He compares this to matzah that's cooked. What's the status when matzah is cooked? Does the bracha does it lose its status as matzah or not? So he says the Tanya. Look at this. Look at the story by matzah. Yotzin. On Pesach, if you want to feel the mitzvah on Pesach, you have a mitzvah of eating matzah. We're about the middle of the page. Yotzin b'retit hasharu b'mayim. You fulfill your obligation of matzah on Pesach with if you have matzah that you soaked in water. You took matzah and you soaked it in water. And now you want to know, can I eat this matzah and fulfill my mitzvah of Pesach of matzah with this matzah that was soaked in water? So the first opinion says, say that again. So the soaking the food would not be, you can't soak your clothing on Shabbat in water. You can't clean your clothing with water, but putting the matzah in the water should not be a problem. There should not be any prohibition. Again, we're talking about it's matzah. It's already baked. It's already done. What's saying? So Machmir. Like the Hasidim, that's called Gebrachos. The Hasidim do not on Pesach. They do not soak as Ariel says. The Hasidim have customs. They will not soak matzah. They wouldn't put matzah in water. They wouldn't because they're afraid. What is their stringency? In case there's a part of the matzah that wasn't baked properly, they're afraid if it comes in contact with the water, it will come to become chametz. That's the stringency that they have. So therefore, as Ariel said, that's called gebrachos. They don't eat gebrachos. They don't eat matzah that was soaked. That's soaked in water. Exactly what. But here on Pesach, then they would eat it. Right. It's only a question on Pesach. And one day, only the last day of Pesach, outside the land of Israel, and the Hasidim are lenient. The last day of Pesach. That's the matzah shriya. Matzah that's soaked. That's what we clearly see from the Gemara, that the Gemara has no problem in matzah that was soaked. So we clearly see this in extra stringency. That's why they're called Hasidim. Hasidim go above and beyond, and that's the stringency that they have. So now the Gemara says, Mavusha, so too, if you went ahead and you the matzah after you went ahead and baked the matzah. So the first opinion says you could fulfill your mitzvah with this matzah that was cooked, that was subsequently cooked, as long as it did not dissolve as long as it did not come into small little dissolve in the cooking, as long as you cooked it lightly, and let's say it was a hard matzah, very hard matzah, and it didn't dissolve into it didn't shred up in the water that you cooked it, and therefore you would be able to fulfill your mitzvah of matzah, even though you subsequently cooked the matzah. And that's what the first opinion, Divrei Rav Meir. That's the opinion of Rav Meir. A matzah is still a matzah. He holds a matzah is still a matzah, even after you went through the process of cooking the matzah. After you bake the matzah, you cook the matzah, you soak the matzah, it retains the status of matzah. And since it retains the status of matzah, you could go ahead and use it for Pesach and fulfill your obligation. The first night of Pesach, you have to eat matzah. You fulfill your obligation by eating that matzah. You got it? Everybody got it? Claire, Yaron, you got it? That's what the Gemara says. But Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi disagrees. Rabbi Yossi says that Berakik HaSharui, he says that if you take the matzah and you go ahead and you soak it in the water, the case that Ariel was talking about, that you fulfill your mitzvah. It hasn't altered the matzah sufficiently to say that it lost its status of matzah, and you can go ahead and what? And fulfill your mitzvah with that matzah that you just soaked in the water. And some people, most probably elderly people or people have issues with their teeth, that will be hard for them to eat hard the matzah. This would be a way to do it for them, is to soak it in the water, according to this Gemara, that the Gemara says. Now the only question is, it says yotzin, you can fulfill your obligation. Does it mean l'chatchila you should do it or not? Maybe you should. Maybe after the fact you fulfill your mitzvah. We have to see the halacha exactly. Is this something that would be recommended before the fact, or just after the fact? The Gemara is talking about. So now, Rabbi Yossi says you could. What do you say? Right. I'm just saying a side point that in practical halacha, the fact that we say both opinions say you can fill your obligation by soaking matzah in water might not be that that's what you should do before the fact. It could just be. I just wanted to point that out. It might just be that you could, after the fact, it would work, and maybe for certain circumstances you could do it. But doesn't mean that let's start a new thing. Let's start soaking matzah for the night of Pesach and water. That's all I wanted to point. But the connection that the Gemara is connecting the two is the question is, does the cooking alter the thing? And that is the common denominator, and that's what the rabbi wants to say, that he found a precedent. He found another case by matzah that there's a machloket, there's an argument whether the cooking alters the status of the matzah. So he wants to say the same way that they argue over there, whether the cooking alters the status of the matzah, he wants to say is the same argument of these two rabbis when it comes to cooked vegetables. He wants to compare the two. The Gemara is going to move away from it, but that's this rabbi's opinion. He wants to say that he found a precedent. And what's the precedent? Because by matzah, everybody agrees you could soak the matzah, and you still fulfill your mitzvah on soaked matzah, but there's an argument if the matzah was cooked. So that's what the second rabbi of Yossi Berakik HaSharui of a low b'mevusham. Afa pi shalom nimuach. Even though the cooked matzah did not dissolve into little pieces, the cooked matzah remained intact. It still lost its status of matzah. And therefore, since it loses the status of matzah, you can't go ahead and fulfill your mitzvah. I mean, it has to be lechem oni. That's not, that the cooking changed the status of where it was before. And that's what the Gemara wants to say. Same thing when you have a pri adama, a vegetable. The cooking changes the status of the vegetable, and therefore, you don't say a pri adama according to that opinion. Now, the Gemara shoots back and says, no, you can't compare the discussion by matzah to the discussion of vegetables, because there's something about matzah that's unique, that's not by vegetables, and the fact that one rabbi says that cooking the matzah doesn't work, and you cannot fill your mitzvah, does not necessarily mean that he says that it will alter the bracha when it comes to vegetables. Why? What's the difference between matzah and vegetables? So the Gemara says like this: V'lohi, the kuli alma, everybody holds. Shalkut mevorach aleim, shalkut, the bracha for shalkut, everybody holds. Shalkut mevorachin aleim bori pri adama. The bracha for shalkut is bori pri hadama. Everybody holds that way. The fact that you cooked it does not lose its status. Maybe those rabbis, those Tanaim that argue regarding matzah, maybe they would agree that by vegetables it retains the bracha hadama. However, v'ad kan lo kama Rav Yossi hatam. Rav Yossi says over there, Ela mishum dechi be'inan tam shel matzah. We need the mishum be'inan tam matzah. We need the taste of matzah, and therefore, as a result of cooking the matzah, he says it lost some of the taste. The cooking takes away some of the taste, and that's the machloket. The machloket is is enough of the taste go away as a result of the cooking that now it's no longer considered that the matzah. So one opinion says the cooking alters the taste enough to say that it lost its status, the real taste of matzah. And the other opinion says, no, that level that it lost is not called enough, that it still has a certain amount of the original taste of the matzah, and that's sufficient to call it matzah. So that's the issue over there by the matzah. The Gemara says, but the vegetables, it's not about, there's no special halacha. It's not like matzah it's about being called a matzah that has to have the taste of a matzah. The vegetables, as long as if you cook the vegetable, it's still a vegetable, and therefore there's no special halacha that has to have the original taste. Sometimes the cooking improves the taste. By matzah, it's all about the original taste of the matzah has to be intact, enough to be considered a matzah. So if you alter that taste, the classic matzah taste, it doesn't make a difference if you improved it. It's about that original taste. If you don't have the Coke classic, so to speak, if you don't have that original matzah taste, it's no good. You lost the matzah. But vegetables, it's about, if it's still cooked and it's still positive taste, even if it's a different taste than before, it'll be a adama. Leak, and whatever the other examples there might be, it should be hadama, unless retain right. The Gemara says, so like the question of halacha, I feel Rabbi Yossi modeh. Rabbi Yossi would modeh that by the vegetables will retain the bracha. Amar Rav Chia bar Abba Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Chia bar Abba says, we have a report of Chia bar Abba in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Shlokot mevarchin aleim bori pri adama. So here we have a report from one of the great students of Rav Yochanan. His name was Rav Chia bar Abba. And what did Rav Chia bar Abba say? In the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Shlokot mevarchin aleim bori pri adama. Bracha for Shlokot is bori pri adama. You cook the vegetable, it's still bori pri adama. Still it's called a pri adama. Have a great day, Sammy. Rabbi Yamin by Yefet Omar. Rabbi Yamin, the son of Yefet, says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, he has a diff. He's recording something else in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. What does he say in the name of Rabbi Yochanan? We have two different rabbis quoting Rabbi Yochanan, and each rabbi is saying something else that the rabbi said. They're quoting the same rabbi, like the two rabbis saying, this rabbi said Rabbi Avad Yosef says this, and this rabbi said Rabbi Avad Yosef says that. Two different rabbis quoting the same rabbi, and each one coming with a saying that the rabbi said something different. Now, sometimes it's possible that sometimes the rabbi says something one time, and then years later he changed his mind. But generally, that's not happening. It's not general. It's not the common thing. So now the Gemara wants to know which reporting is the more accurate reporting. Which rabbi's opinion are we going to follow? Two rabbis saying the same thing in the name. I would say, let's say Rav Moshe Feinstein. If Rav David Feinstein, if the son of Rav Moshe Feinstein would quote his father, would say what his father held, and someone else would say what Rav Moshe Feinstein would say, I would say you go where Rabbi David Feinstein says his father said, because he's the son. He's in that inner circle. He's always with his father. He would be the one, and he's the big Torah scholar. So that's what you would say. So now that's what the Gemara. So now the Gemara is going to talk about this point right now. The relationship and the style of the person who's quoting the rabbi. I mean, if Rav David Feinstein quotes his father, and then a 25-year-old person quotes his father, Rav David Feinstein is 90 years old, and he's a much more experienced scholar than the 25-year-old, who are you going to go with? With all due respect to the 25-year-old man, and nothing against the 25-year-old guy. But you would go with the person. So the Gemara says, oh, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says that I want to tell you that really, that the Ula, who says it in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, really he did not hear it from Rabbi Yochanan. Really, he heard this opinion of Binyamin ben Yefet. And because Rabbi Binyamin ben Yefet said this in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, so when Ula reported it in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, it's not that Ula heard it from Rabbi Yochanan. He heard it from Rabbi Binyamin ben Yefet, who said it in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So Ula reported as if Rabbi Yochanan said it. But doesn't mean that he didn't hear it from Yochanan. Now, it's like somebody says, Rav Moshe Feinstein said this. Now, how do you know Rav Moshe Feinstein said this? Someone else said it. If I said Rav Moshe Feinstein said it. But really, you didn't hear it directly from Rav Moshe Feinstein. You heard Ruvain said that Rav Moshe Feinstein said it. So that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, Kava Ula Lishabeshtei. Ula said his mistake. We're about 10 lines before the white lines. Kava Ula Lishabeshtei Kirabiyucha Binyamin ben Yefet. The reason why he reports it in that way in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, because he heard that Rabbi Binyamin ben Yefet said it in Rabbi Yochanan, and therefore he already thought it's Rabbi Yochanan said it, and therefore when he quotes Rabbi Yochanan, it's not that he heard it from Yochanan himself. And Toiba Rav Zera. Rav Zera is wondering about this. We just quoted a machloka. We said there's two opinions in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. There's the opinion of Chia bar Abba, who states Rabbi Yochanan says, I'll cook vegetables as Adama. And we have the opinion of Binyamin ben Yefet that says, Rabbi Yochanan says that cook vegetables, they say, Ashahako. You brought two opinions. So first of all, the Gemara, Rabbi Zera says, V'chima inyan Rabbi Binyamin ben Yefet is Rabbi Chia bar Abba. How could you list these two rabbis together? How could you, as if these are of equal stature, that the big midrash is, this rabbi says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan this rabbi says Rabbi Yochanan that. The other rabbi is so much more authoritative, or so much more a higher level rabbi that you could rely on, that you shouldn't bring it down as if it's an equal argument of what Rabbi Yochanan says. It's obvious because the one rabbi was so careful. One of these rabbis who made the reporting was very exact and always precise. And he always reviewed his learning in front of the rabbi, Rabbi Yochanan himself. So therefore, he's much more authoritative, if that's the right word. And therefore, how do you even list the other rabbi as if it's like an equal setting? The Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Yefet says to Rav Chia bar Abba. Rav Chia bar Abba dayik. Rav Chia bar Abba was dayik, was very careful in the language of his rabbi. Goma shmaita mi Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi. He learned. He was very careful, and when he heard the words from his rabbi, when his rabbi taught, he was very careful in the teaching of his rabbi. But Rabbi Yamin ben Yefet lo dayik. Rabbi Yamin ben Yefet wasn't as exact, as thorough. There are some people that are more thorough than others, and Rav Chia bar Abba was extremely thorough. And Rashi says that he actually would make signs, simanim, to remember. Like sometimes you go ahead and you do something to remember what the rabbi said. You create certain things to not to forget. Talking about Berachos, but now we're talking about in general how this rabbi Chia bar Abba, how that's profile, what kind of student he was. He was that student, like sometimes in class, who's going to give the notes from the teacher? So there's a certain student that we want the notes of that. They don't miss a beat. And someone told me recently about a certain student that the professor or the teacher, the rabbi, wanted that notes. Because the student kept such amazing notes of what the teacher said. The teacher themselves wants those notes. So that's the type of person. And and remember, they used to do things by heart back then. So that's why sometimes people make a mistake in certain things. It's not like today that things are written, and therefore this rabbi made special signs to remember. Signs mean whatever type of things, mnemonics or whatever. It could be who knows what he did to remember. Remember what the rabbi. They didn't have YouTube, but they didn't have all that stuff, right? Now. And furthermore, Rav Chia bar Abba kol tlatin yomim, every 30 days, mahadeh tamudei kamed Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi. He would have a meeting with his rabbi every 30 days. Morris, he had a meeting, and I'm gonna review with my rabbi everything I heard from the rabbi the last 30 days. That's how Tosfos learns the Gemara. Every 30 days, once a month. I want to review what we learned. Well, you taught me all these things. Maybe he rattled off the bottom line, because I presume learning is not just a bottom line. Learning is how you develop the questions, the answers, and all that. And I presume he reviewed a lot of the bottom line, a lot of the conclusions of all the learning. Once every.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning,
Mike. We should do it. We should do it.
Yes, it's beautiful that this idea of chazara, reviewing. You should know when a person becomes a shochet, they talk about this, how often you have to review in the beginning when you learn the laws of shchita. There's a system in the beginning that you can't just go, I learned it, now I'm going to become a shochet and slaughter without reviewing. There's a certain, I remember the discussion how often they have to review in the beginning. So here's this idea of every month he reviewed. So therefore, va'od. So therefore, besides these two things, besides the fact that this rabbi was so much more reliable in the exactness, you can have a great rabbi, but it doesn't mean he's as precise and exact and like the other rabbi. You know what I mean? Some people are a little bit more specific and more, on all the details. There are some people that are that type of person. Va'od bar mindain. Besides these two things, the Gemara says, Taharutu Musa, there was this type of bean. The Shokile Shvad Zimna B'Kedera. They cooked it. The way to do it is you have to cook it 7 times in the pot, because to take away some of the sharpness of the bean as a result of cooking it with the water and the cooking it takes away the sharpness. And as a result of taking away the sharpness, and it even actually turns sweet. And they have, so it all did right. And what happened? The so they had it as dessert. What's the bracha that we say on this? It's dessert, right? Having something for dessert is not part of the meal. We say a bracha on dessert, right? We have fruit for dessert. We make a bracha on the fruit. Even if we go ahead and we had bread, right? I would suggest that the Gemara is talking about kinua sudan. That means they had bread, and this is dessert, and they were eating this piece, like these. It's not chickpeas; it's a certain type of pea that they ate. It's a certain type of bean that they ate as dessert, and they want to know what bracha. It's not part of the meal. Just like the fruit that you have at the end of the meal is not part of the meal. They'll say a border creates if you have apples at the end of the meal. So therefore, I want to know what I have my grapes at the end of the meal. I say a border creates on my grapes. I'm saying it might here that might be more of a food if it's eaten as a filler. You have to know how it's eaten. Here, this is eaten. Okay, if it's eaten as something that's eaten as dessert, the only question would be if you're eating as dessert, but it's usually eaten as a meal food, that might still have this sense of meal food. You know what I'm saying? As dessert, right? Okay, but here we have this phenomenon in the Gemara. Means vegetables are dama. Right. Yeah, because what I'm saying to you, Mr. Abers, perhaps because all the vegetables today are not eaten as dessert. But if you would have a vegetable, this type of bean, whatever this bean was, maybe Rabbi Osko could tell you what type of bean it was. This type of bean was made, it's very processed, very special. You had to cook it 7 times. And it was like a delicacy. Or you made it and it came sweet as a result, and this is how they ate it as dessert only, most probably. See what I'm saying? It's not like a vegetable that's eaten as a regular part of a meal. So this is dessert only. This would be a bore prihadama. That's the case of the Gemara, black and white, just like if a guy has pineapple is not a vegetable, it's a fruit. Pineapple, a banana for dessert. You make a dama at the end of a meal, right? You go ahead and they want to, after you had your bread, they cooked it 7 times. I'm not sure if they added anything to it, but it still retained that it was still a dama. Meaning it wasn't like whatever they added to it, maybe they added something to help sweeten it. So the Gemara says, and he told them, so we see the fact that it was cooked. The fact that it was cooked, it's appropriate dama. Don't tell me that a cooked vegetable is a shahako. We see cooked vegetables could be hadama. So therefore, we see that reporting that says in the name of Yochanan that the cooked vegetable is hadama. That's a very strong reporting. And furthermore, Omer Rav Chiya bar Abba, Ani re'isis of Yochanan she'achal zayis maliach. I saw that he ate an olive that was salted. And the Gemara is saying salting process, the heat of the salting is like cooked. And they salted the olive and it retained the bracha. It did not lose the bracha of Borei Pri Eitz. Ubarach le betchila b'sof. And he said a bracha, Borei Pri Eitz in the beginning. And that's how the Gemara is learning. And he said ala eitz, the special after bracha at the end. And the Gemara says, if you say, Bishlama, Shalkus Mosiah Kaimi, that the cooked vegetable remains in its same status. So therefore, Betchila, at the first he said a Borei Pri Eitz on the salted olive. And at the end, he said Ala Eitz Pri Eitz. If you say that the cooked vegetable loses its status, so what kind of bracha did he say at the end? The Gemara was thinking that that the bracha of Borei Nefashot, this opinion was thinking, is only on eggs, on fish, but things like on vegetables. The Gemara was thinking, you would not make a Borei Nefashot. That's what the Gemara was thinking. There's an opinion like that says that the Borei Nefashot is only on eggs and types of meat. No, we hold Borei Nefashot is on much broader, not just eggs, meat, vegetables, fruits, only the fruits of Israel, like grapes and those type of things, and olives and pomegranate have a special ala eitz. But we say Borei Nefashot is on most foods. It's a Borei Nefashot. We don't say Borei Nefashot on cakes, the crackers, pasta, and certain and certain fruits of Israel, or else everything else is a bar nefashos. You have chicken, you have meat, you have a drink. It's bar nefashos. It's the main, and I'm frightened to say that not enough people know the bracha bar nefashos. Most people, don't. A guy has cornflakes in the morning. A guy has 1 ounce. 1 ounce, 27 grams, the kazayid, as long as you eat it within a certain amount of time. I think maybe Ravani says 7 minutes, 7.5 minutes, or something like that. Then if you eat that 1 ounce you have 1 ounce of egg, 1 ounce of now, but it comes to a liquid, it's different. Liquid, you need, let's say, around 3 ounces of liquid. 3, that's different. Right, we said this, vegetables are all solids. Burn the fashol, and all solids, 1 ounce of that solid within a certain amount of time, within 7 minutes or so, you go ahead and say a burn the fashol. Right? Unless you have cake, then you make ala michya. We'll continue tomorrow on this. Depends what type of cereal you're eating. If it's cereal, Shako cereal, burn the fashol. Hadama cereal, burn the fashol. Rice Krispies is burn the fashol. Even though you make a mezonot on Rice Krispies, burn the fashol. If you have Cheerios, you make ala michya. Because Cheerios is it has the wheat. Cheerios is mezonot. Cheerios is made with grain, wheat. Cheerios is made with wheat. The bracha on Cheerios is mezonot, and the bracha, if you have Cheerios for breakfast, you say ala michya. Right? Mr. Hay, who has the Berachos app? You have the Berachos app, Akiva? Avi, you have the Berachos app? Look at Berachos, put Berachos, take the Berachos, show Mr. Hay with the Berachos app. Look at, right? That's Ashkenaz, but that's a good point. But I don't believe there's any difference in this case, Mr. Haber. Okay, so here we go. This book, I don't know if they would identify. No, some books. Okay. Let's see. They don't list it here, but it's definitely a mezonot on the Cheerios. You found it on the Berachos app? Okay, I want to wish everyone a great day. Good having everybody on. Okay.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a good day, everybody.
Great day, everybody.
Thank
You too.
you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.